Skill trees have become prevalent in modern gaming, serving as a clever way to reward players for investing hours in these games and unlocking new moves and passive abilities as they progress through these titles. While the skill trees in most video games can be maxed out in no time, the same can't be said for other titles. Several games use skill trees as a way to help players personalize their protagonist's build and make them proficient in certain avenues at the cost of others.
You've got work to do. Your reflexes are still slow.
Welcome to Game Rant, everyone. I'm Bilal, and here are the 10 games that feature the biggest skill trees. Kicking things off with Crosscode. Players who want to experience an isekai story will find Crosscode to be right up their alley. Taking place in an MMORPG called Crossworlds, players control a silent protagonist named Leia who has lost her memories and must play the game to overcome her amnesia. Players can invest in Leia's circuits to enhance a wealth of abilities and make her more capable in combat. Featuring a charming story, memorable characters, and excellent combat, Crosscode is an underrated indie gem that more people need to check out. Up next, Nioh 2. Given that Nioh 2 was a brilliant sequel in every department, it's only a given that the skill tree from the first game also saw a notable upgrade. The sheer number of skills that players can upgrade is massive, forcing you to specialize instead of becoming a jack of all trades. Not only are there skill trees for each weapon type in the game, but there are also other avenues of combat like ninjutsu, onmyo magic, samurai abilities, shifting skills, and more. Moving ahead to Cyberpunk 2077. The 2.0 update for Cyberpunk 2077 has been a godsend for players who felt like the game's progression systems could use some serious work. It's been a game-changing update, with notable improvements including weapons not being leveled anymore and armor being tied to cyberware rather than clothing. With the overhauled system, players can focus on being an all-out warrior or expert netrunner without worrying about their effectiveness in combat being adversely affected. Next up, Prey. The reboot of Prey as an immersive sim ended up being a great decision that allowed players to get hooked on this sci-fi horror masterpiece. Controlling Morgan Yu and slowly expanding your suite of abilities across the series made for a great time. There are 3 branches each for both human and Typhon abilities, which made for a complex and engaging skill tree that players could interact with however they wished. Next on the list, Factorio. Factorio is one of the most engaging simulation games out there. The simple act of running a factory becomes deceptively complex as players come to grips with the game's systems. If the gameplay loop itself wasn't challenging in its own right, Factorio also has a massive tech tree that players need to invest in to make their factories efficient. Without investing properly in this tech tree, players will either be overwhelmed by alien life forms or see their factories become overloaded and fail due to a lack of sustainability. Moving on to Diablo II. The skill tree in Diablo II is definitely on the unintuitive side. That's not to say the game's skill tree system is bad though. In fact, Diablo 2's success can be partially attributed to the sheer variety of playstyles and builds available thanks to the game's in-depth approach to skills, offering a breadth of smaller choices rather than only a few powerful ones. Now, looking at the Borderlands series. The Borderlands series features separate skill trees for each playable character, each of which is then separated into different sub-trees for further specialization. While each individual tree tends to be no more than 10 lines long, the sheer number of available options in the game is staggering. Considering that each playable character has 3 separate skill trees in each game, and those trees each contain a dozen or more options, each game features hundreds and hundreds of skill tree options in total. Back to MMOs, we're looking at Rift. For its skill tree system, called the Soul Tree in-game, players have the option to choose from dozens upon dozens of abilities and stat upgrades as they level up. The system allows players to choose talents that would traditionally be more oriented to a different specialization for their class, just like in World of Warcraft Classic. Where other modern MMOs simplify much of the talent system though, Rift revels in the diversity of the Soul Tree system. Next skill tree, Path of Exile. Path of Exile has perhaps the most notoriously large skill tree of all time. Players new to the game will level up on the beach quickly enough, at which point they get their first skill point. Then they are brought to their class's default starting position on the Labyrinthian skill tree. It looks small enough until players zoom out. The skill tree in Path of Exile is so comically massive because of the game's focus on being able to do anything with any character. Even if the players start out in the Rangers area of the skill tree, they can eventually take on other class talents too, as long as they take a path that leads them there. And to end this list off, we're looking at Salt and Sanctuary. Salt and Sanctuary is an indie RPG that is far from a walk in the park. It takes a lot of inspiration from Dark Souls in its gameplay, but its skill tree system, fittingly called the Tree of Skill, is entirely its own. The Tree of Skill in this game offers players a choice of more than 100 skills and stat upgrades. The tree is a marvel to behold and beautifully laid out, but the sheer number of options in the Tree of Skill could intimidate even the most time-worn old-school gamer. And those are the 10 games that feature the biggest skill trees. We'll see you next time.